If you close your eyes and let the noise of the day fade out, you can almost hear it, the distant echo of a marching band drifting across crisp autumn air, the low murmur of a crowd, swelling into a roar, the thud of leather against grass under bright stadium lights, and somewhere, in that layered, timeless soundscape lives more than a century of college football history, stretching back to a cold afternoon in 1869 when Rutgers University met Princeton University in a game that barely resembled what we know today. A contest played with round balls and improvised rules, yet carrying within it the first heartbeat of a sport that would grow into a ritual of Saturdays, a tapestry of rivalries, dynasties, heartbreak, and glory. From those rough beginnings, the game evolved slowly, shaped by visionaries like Walter Camp, who introduced the line of scrimmage and the system of downs, turning chaos into structure and giving the sport its strategic skeleton. And as the decades rolled into the early 20th century, college football became more than a pastime, it became a cultural force, with teams boarding trains to hostile territories, towns shutting down for matchups, and legends beginning to take form on muddy fields where leather helmets offered little protection and courage was measured in bruises. By the time Notre Dame Fighting Irish rose to national prominence under Knute Rockne, the game had found its poetry, its pageantry, and its myth-makers. And names like the Four Horsemen carried a mythic quality, galloping through defenses and into newspaper headlines, while far to the south the foundations of what would become the southeastern powerhouse culture were quietly being laid, culminating decades later in the dominance of programs like the Alabama Crimson Tide under Bear Bryant, a houndstooth-hatted symbol of discipline and quiet authority who stalked the sidelines, with a rolled-up program in hand, building a dynasty defined not just by victories, but by an identity physical, relentless, unyielding. And yet college football has always been more than dynasties. It has been about singular afternoons that seem suspended in time, like the 1971 game of the century between Nebraska Cornhuskers and Oklahoma Sooners, where the nation paused to watch the Titans collide in a one versus two showdown that felt less like a game and more like a reckoning, or the unforgettable 1984 upset when Brigham Young University Cougars completed a perfect season that challenged traditional power structures, reminding everyone that magic can emerge from unexpected places. The sport's history is layered with moments of improbable triumph, like when Boise State Broncos stunned Oklahoma Sooners in the 2007 Fiesta Bowl with a cascade of trick plays, the hook and lateral, the halfback pass, the Statue of Liberty, each one unfolding like a bedtime story twist. The final two-point conversion sealed not just with points but with a proposal at midfield, a reminder that college football's drama often spills into something almost cinematic. And woven through these games are rivalries that feel ancient and personal. None more storied than Army-Navy game, where cadets and midshipmen clash not for rankings but for pride and tradition, or the annual meeting of Ohio State Buckeyes and Michigan Wolverines in the game, a rivalry so intense that entire seasons are measured by its outcome, where snowflakes sometimes drift down like confetti, and legends are carved in cold November air. As television expanded the sport's reach in the latter half of the 20th century, the spectacle grew brighter, the stadiums larger, the stakes higher, culminating in the Bowl Championship Series era and eventually the college football playoff. Systems designed to crown a definitive champion, yet always sparking debate, because debate is part of the sport's DNA, as intrinsic as the marching bands and tailgates. And through it all, certain figures towered above the rest, quarterbacks who seemed to bend games to their will, like Tim Tebow at University of Florida, whose emotional speeches and improbable comebacks blurred the line between sport and sermon, or Reggie Bush dazzling under the lights at University of Southern California, gliding across the field with a kind of effortless grace that made defenders look like shadows chasing sunlight. The pageantry of bowl season itself has always carried a dreamlike quality. From the roses and sunset hues of the rose, bowl to the sugar-sweet spectacle of the Sugar Bowl, each game wrapped in its own traditions, parades and memories, each stadium a cathedral of echoes where generations of fans can point to a specific patch of turf and say, that is where it happened, that is where we were, But history is not only about triumph, it is also about change and reckoning, and college football has navigated shifting cultural landscapes. From integration in the mid-20th century, when brave athletes stepped onto fields that had once excluded them, to the modern era of conference realignment, where historic affiliations dissolved and new alliances formed in pursuit of revenue and exposure, reshaping the map of the sport in ways that would have seemed unimaginable to those early players in 1869. And still, despite billion-dollar television contracts and playoff brackets, the essence remains startlingly intimate: a campus lit up on a Saturday night, students painted in school colors, alumni returning to familiar gates, a band spelling out letters at halftime, a kicker lining up for a field goal as the clock ticks down, and the entire stadium inhales at once, suspended between hope and despair. Think of the kick six in 2013, when Auburn Tigers returned a missed field goal against Alabama Crimson Tide for a touchdown. As time expired, a play that unfolded in a blur of disbelief and sprinting legs, forever altering the Iron Bowl's lore, or the quiet dignity of underdog programs fighting for recognition, their players balancing classes and practice, their victories resonating through small towns like shared secrets. Over time, the sport has produced not just champions but storytellers, broadcasters whose voices became synonymous with autumn Saturdays, and traditions that feel almost sacred: the dotting of the I, the lighting of victory cigars, the ringing of campus bells, rituals that tether past to present so seamlessly that it becomes difficult to separate memory from myth. And perhaps that is the true magic of college football history. It is less a straight line and more a slow, looping river, carrying with it fragments of every era, from leather helmets to high-definition broadcasts, from segregated stands to inclusive stadiums, from regional pride to national spectacle, each decade layering new stories atop old foundations, so that when you listen closely you can hear them all at once. The crackle of a 1920s radio broadcast, the grainy television footage of a 1960s bowl game, the thunderous surround sound of a modern playoff semifinal blending into a single, continuous lullaby of competition and community. As conferences expanded coast to coast and playoff brackets promised clarity yet delivered fresh controversy, the sport somehow retained its core: young athletes chasing a ball across painted lines, aware that they are participating in something older and larger than themselves, stepping into roles once occupied by legends whose names still drift through campus corridors. And even as rules change to prioritize safety, as nil agreements redefine amateurism, as stadiums install ever larger screens and luxury suites, the heartbeat remains steady, echoing that first contest between Rutgers and Princeton, reminding us that at its heart this is a story about belonging to a school, a team, a memory, a moment. And so as the hours pass and the stories settle gently around you, like fallen leaves on a quiet field after the crowd has gone home, you begin to sense that college football history is not just a chronicle of games won and lost, but a shared American folklore told in shoulder pads and fight songs, in crisp air and bright lights, in underdogs and emperors, in marching bands and goalposts carried through campus streets, a sprawling narrative that invites you to rest within it, to drift through decades as if paging slowly through an old scrapbook, each photograph sepia-toned and softly illuminated, until the noise fades once more into that distant echo of a band playing somewhere far away, steady and reassuring, like a rhythm you have always known.